Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you very much. First of all, I got to thank Christu, our city director over in Pretoria. He actually was the one who came up with this idea and says, "Hey, Tommy, can we, before the end of the year, can we get some people together to really be able to talk about Resource Global and our cohorts, all of that stuff? Who's someone that would be good?" And ideally, it was just for South Africa. I said, "Well, you know what? I thought of a perfect person, my friend Tony Bancroft, who we have not talked to since he actually moved over to California." So, Tony, I know you're now in Nashville, Tennessee with is your twin brother, right, Tony?
Yeah, I have a twin brother, and he lived out here for like the last 10 years, so I came out here to join him.
Yeah, yeah. How far are you guys apart? How far are you guys from each other?
I mean, like 20 minutes or something. Not too bad. Yeah, we both work together too. Hey, there's Destin. I know Destin.
Uh, Really quickly, for those who are just coming on, and a lot of times this segment into our conversation with Tony today, it'll be more of a Q&A for some of you guys also who have questions for Tony. Feel free to put it in the chat. I know a bunch of you guys have already sent me some questions that we're going to go over with Tony. But for those who are new to Resource Global or are familiar with Resource Global really believes in this whole idea that young Christian marketplace leaders are the catalyst for gospel growth in their cities. 10 years ago, we started this cohort in Jakarta, Indonesia. And it was an 8-month cohort in which you're meeting once a month and you're paired up with a mentor, ideally in your city, in your network or your industry and all of that stuff. And during that 8 months, you're learning themes like gospel and the gospel story, gospel and identity, calling, mission, leadership, faith and work, all of that. What started in Jakarta, Indonesia, now we're in 13 different global cities, Tony. And so
Wow.
it's in Nairobi, it's in Kuala Lumpur, it's in Hong Kong, it's in Singapore, it's in Cluj, it's in Pretoria, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and LA and Austin. And we are just starting a new one beginning next year over in Sao Paulo. And the
Wow.
whole idea is you're learning these general themes, but your city director and your team over there is able to contextualize what does mission look like in a Nairobi context? What does leadership look like in the Johannesburg context as SIBS and Obi leads and guides it? And you're going to hear from different leaders from different industry. You're going to hear from pastors. You're going to hear from marketplace leaders. You're going to hear from ministry leaders, men and women from your city and cities around the world. Because our goal is that we want someone from Hong Kong to learn from someone in Cluj. What is God doing in Cluj? How are you learning in Cluj? What can I learn from you? I want someone in Cluj to learn from someone in Austin or LA. I want someone from LA to learn what's happening in Cape Town and Johannesburg. Because the collective learning allows us to be better Christ followers, to really be able to continue to serve and continue to really advance the gospel in our cities. And through all this stuff, and we'll send you more information, there are 8-month cohorts which begin in January of 2025. And so one of those things is you're going to have teachers like a Tony Bancroft. During those 8-month cohorts, you're going to meet with like-minded people. You're going to have to apply for it. But if you're accepted, you're going to meet with like-minded individuals, about 15 to 20 in each one of our cities, who are really learning what it means to integrate your faith, what the role of Christian in culture. You're going to learn about mission. You're going to learn about calling, all of that. You're going to learn what it means to understand the problems of your city, how to serve your city well. You're going to learn about stewardship, all of those things. And so I'm going to send you guys more information about all of our different cohorts. You have Christu Sadie, who is over in Pretoria. You have Obi, who is over in Johannesburg. You have Kevin Pippard, who is over in Cape Town. You have the team of Mwangi, Wamushie, and Timothy over in Nairobi, Jakarta with Ann and Jenny, all of those things. And so we'll send you more information. For me here, for those who are in the US, I lead a US virtual cohort for those who are not in LA or Austin. And so we also will meet as well too. With that said, the types of speakers I like to bring in is different people who are doing wonderful things, but we're going to hear from different industries. And one of those industries is the area of animation. Tony, 10 years ago, we brought some of the people here, remember you, we brought a group to LA, and
Yeah.
there we met you for the first time in LA, and you shared about your story, animation, your history working with Disney. And so I want to bring you back today, and we're going to catch up. For those who are new, we're going to hear a little bit about your story and hear about some of the new projects that you're working on. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just say thank you for having me, Tommy. It's always great to see you and be a part of the Global Resources group here. You guys do fabulous work, and I'm a believer myself, and have been a Christian most of my life, but probably I think I was about 12 to 13 when I started following the Lord. And it was always one of those questions, and I'm sure there's people out there that are listening here that wants to do more creative endeavors, but do it through the lens of faith, the faith that you have, or in service to God. And I'm here to say it's definitely possible, and it is doable, and it is happening in my life. And if I could be any kind of example to you guys and an encouragement to you guys, I hope I can today. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Yeah, as Tommy says, I worked for Disney for many years, at least 12 years, and I was there during the heyday. Kind of, they call it the second golden age of Disney animation, which was the 90s, basically. So, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Some of you might remember that. I'm going to go way back into your childhood now. Who Framed Roger Rabbit had just come out when I was going to school studying animation with my twin brother Tom. It's hard to talk about my story without talking about my twin brother because we do the same thing. We've always drawn together and got into animation at Disney at the same point and all that kind of stuff. So Tom and I, grew up loving to draw and just sketching all the time, and we thought, in our secular way of thinking back then, we thought that the chicks would love it, if we could draw funny pictures. That was not true. We never got a girlfriend because we drew silly drawings, unfortunately. But it did not stop us from our passion and our drive to create characters, and we were gonna do comic strips together and all this kind of stuff. Be the next Charles Schultz. That was kind of the dream back then. And then we fell into animation really when we started going to a city college where we're exploring more like drawing classes. And we got into a cinematography class that was where we were starting to study film and filmmaking. And we just had a passion for that. And we always grew up with, Saturday morning cartoons and also movies. And we thought, wow, animation just combines the best of all those worlds. We could become not only character makers and in comic strips where you're just doing one drawing after another that are very still and don't move and don't act, but we can also become actors through our drawings, through animation. And that really was a big light bulb. That was kind of the first light bulb for me anyway when I was younger. And this was right around the time of starting to look for a college to go to. We had been taking some city college classes, but that was more just kind of for play and to see where we wanted to go. And then God just opened up a friendship, a relationship with somebody at that city college that was doing these cool little clay animated movies. And Tommy, I'm sorry, I'm just going off here. Is that all right?
Oh yeah, please, please,
You
Tony.
said it. You said just talk for an hour, and I'm already going. But it was like God opened that door when we saw this kid that's our age, and he was making these clay animated music videos, and we were like, "What?" And if he could do that with clay, and we weren't very good sculptors, so we were like, maybe we could do that with our drawings. We investigated colleges immediately and found CalArts, California Institute of the Arts, which is a big Disney college in Valencia, California. And it was like the only place. I mean, I'm old, so back then it was like the only place you could study animation was at CalArts. So we went to CalArts for a couple of years and learned and fell in love with animation. And we got hired into an internship at Disney. This was right as they were finishing Little Mermaid. Who loves the Little Mermaid, right? Come on. All right. We got the mermaids in the house. Anyway, we didn't get a chance to work on it because we started our internship while they were finishing it. But we saw that production coming to an end and we saw what it was like. And we had some mentors that were animating on it. And that was enough for us. We just said, oh, this is great. And thankfully, we got hired for the Disney was just opening a brand new studio in Orlando, Florida, and they needed employees. So we got hired as like employees, like number 5 and 6 of the new Disney MGM Studios Orlando Animation Studio there in Florida, Orlando, Florida. And we're 21, something like that, probably both of us, and single guys, and almost the whole staff there were right out of college, very young core team, with some veterans that were kind of in leadership and teaching us. And it was a great time to be in animation at Disney. So we started working on Rescuers Down Under. We started working on Beauty and the Beast. I did Cogsworth the Clock and Beauty and the Beast as an animator. We went on to Aladdin. I did Iago the Parrot in Aladdin. On Lion King, I got to be asked to do Pumbaa the Warthog. I did Kronk and Emperor's New Groove, and I co-directed Disney's Mulan. I went from some detail to a quick snapshot of my Disney career, but that was a lot of what happened there. Now, as Tommy was saying earlier too, I've gotten into teaching. I love being able to give back. My brother and I have a podcast that we do called the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast, very original title. And we just love to be able to give back and inspire the next group of people doing animation. And particularly what drives me now, and I'm probably getting to this too early, Tommy, is that I really feel strongly that Christians need to be in entertainment, in the entertainment arts, that culturally, movies, animation, video games, all those things really resonate in the world today. And so we can be a voice for Christ. We can be a voice for God in the stories that we tell, or even be an influence on others as a light in studios. Even dark studios need that light. So I really have become an advocate for teaching and bringing up the next group of students that will become professionals in the animation industry and have an effect on the future of entertainment, really through their lens, their God-filled lens.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Tony, for those who are may not be familiar, because I see you post this all the time, is 2D animation versus 3D animation. What for those, some people may know this. What is 2D animation and 3D animation? Because you started off with 2D animation.
Yeah. Can I share my screen? I'll
Oh
show
yeah,
you.
please do.
I'll give you an example. I'm actually working on a student of mine, a grad student, is making a film, and I promised her I would animate a scene in it. So what I'm about to show you is very embarrassing because it's very work in progress. But this is the platform. This is the. Can you see this screen?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Um, this is called Toon Boom Harmony, and this is what I animate in. And so it used to be pencil and paper when I first started in the 90s at Disney, and now everything is actually. Let me turn on this one and turn off that one, and I think it'll be fairly soft. Let me see if I can turn off the layout. Yeah, so it's gonna be a little soft right now, but in tone. But this is a little girl, and there's this like music which we're showing as this blue streak is floating around her and kind of tickling her a little bit as she's holding her stuffed animal and going downstairs. So she just starts to go downstairs at the end. So I've out of context, it's hard to tell what's going on, but this is a scene, and this is how I'll start. Is very rough drawings like this, and one after another, and in sequence, it'll give a sense of movement. And then as I add all the details in of her body, and sometimes her body drops off, or the stuffed animal just becomes a circle. But as I develop this will have movement and timing and emotion to it that all combines to create life, life on the screen where we can follow them and feel for the character. So that's 2D animation, is just every single one of these is a new drawing, and as I fill it in and create all those drawings and put them in the timing here of this timeline, that's how I create the movement of animation.
Got it. Got
In
it.
a nutshell.
Yeah. And in some sense, a 5 minute scene, how long would that take? Because you're still doing freehand and then uploading it in there, right, Tony?
No, I'm actually drawing digitally into the application. So just like I would in Photoshop or an application like this, I'll share this one here too. Um, because I like to doodle and draw in Photoshop, but just like I would here, drawing Kronk, or here's a Pumbaa here, or I started drawing Mickey reading the Bible here. Um, but as I draw in here, you can see, let me see, make sure I'm on a pencil here. It's all digital. I have a stylus and it's all digital illustration. So I can create shapes, and all the shapes, all Disney characters are usually based on a cranium of some kind, a round circle. And so I can draw quickly through just trying to find those shapes of his nose and his eyes. I'm creating structure basically to compose Pumbaa's face. And after a while, it actually starts to look like the character we know and love, especially when you put those nostrils in, right? That's when he really becomes the pig that he is. For those in Africa, Hakuna Matata means no worries. You know that already, though.
Very nice.
It isn't until you put those eyes in that he really starts to feel like the fun-loving warthog that he is. And he's got these warts that come out on the side.
Yeah. Tony, when Disney asked you, and one of the things you mentioned is that you were responsible for Pumbaa, does that mean every single scene with Pumbaa, you're the guy drawing everything?
No, it means that I have a unit, because it's nearly impossible for, or it would or the movies would take like 20 years to make, for one person to do all the work. I mean, you can see from me showing you that little girl animation that I was doing, um, that it's a lot of drawings, and so therefore I have a team. Like on Pumbaa, I probably had a team of um, 3 or 4 animators that helped me. They would do scenes. I would always do like the close-up scenes, because I was the supervising animator. I could pick which scenes I wanted to do, and they were usually the dialogue scenes where he's going Hakuna Matata, and then if he was just walking through the jungle or eating bugs or something with Timon, that might go to a different animator. But it's how we got the film done. But I was also responsible for going over all their work, for supervising them by saying, "Oh no, Pumbaa's nose is a little bit bigger," or "You're placing the eyes too high on the forehead. They need to be a little bit lower," or something like that. And then it was those details that made it look like, one person animated the whole film. And that's really the goal, is that the Lion King feels like it's very consistent, and all the characters are drawn so that they stay consistent.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then how is it different? Like you were also then director of Mulan. How is
Yeah.
that different when you're a director versus now you are a lead animator or lead on the team?
Well, the director is the highest kind of authority on the film, and they're the ones that everybody reports to. So, in a way, I'm the chief approver of all the content and creative elements that go into the film. But more than that, I'm really the main storyteller, trying to hold on to the vision of what we're trying to do with Mulan, who she is, what the thematics that we're trying to capture in the story, what they are, and so that I can communicate that well to the group that has to actually animate it. And so yeah, I'm the one that's approving everybody's work, but also issuing it, telling them what we want, from the voice actors to the screenwriters to the animators, the background painters. I mean, you name it. The director's in charge of every single element in the pipeline of making a movie.
Yeah, yeah. Tony, a lot of times you and I have chatted about this before, and when we talk about faith work integration, it's not like you could sit there as you're the director of Mulan and says, we're going to have to preach the Bible, we're going to put Bible verses here. You just can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
you
does it
can't do it.
look like for you as an animator called by God to work in this industry to integrate your faith in your work as you're directing a Mulan or as you're working on projects such as Pumbaa and Lion King and all of that?
Well, certainly as Christians, we all have one very consistent responsibility in sharing God's word, and that's to be a light, to be an example to others. And so, in that way, we can all be leaders and influencers for Christ in whatever industry it is, right, that we work in. Um, Look at that. I can cheat a little bit and move his rump up a little bit there because it was getting too far away. Uh, but yeah, it's so there's certainly that, and I feel like that was a big part of my time at Disney was to so that people would they would walk into a room, and I literally had this happen, and it's for some people it can be embarrassing, but I always enjoyed it. If I walked into a room and they were telling a nasty story or using curse words or something, oh, Tony's here, oh, Christian in the room, got to stop. you know but that was a sign to me of like I never preached, I never got up on a chair in the commissary or anything and started preaching, but they knew I was a Christian because of how I acted, how I treated people. So we all can do that. But even more specifically, as a director, when I was working on Mulan, there was choices that we could make. We could steer the story to be more to culturally relevant to the Buddhist society that it would have taken place in, and we could have made that part of a large part of our story. Or because we were Christians, we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to showcase that. We certainly had like the ancestors were a part in filial piety or the worship of your ancestors, or doing things for the sake of honoring your ancestors is a very Chinese element. And so we wanted to have that historical and cultural element, and yet we had fun with it. We didn't try and like give it some kind of important reverence that all of a sudden, we're preaching to the audience about filial piety, but so I had control over those kind of push points in the story of and making choices between, do we sway it this way or do we pull it this way? What's going to make it more universal? What's going to be and less offensive too to a larger audience? So yeah, that is a big part of working at Disney too, is universality. They want things to be universal in that we tell stories in a universal way, meaning they have universal truths. So we all, no matter where we live, we all understand themes like "to thine own self be true," be true to who you are, which is what Mulan's theme is, or don't judge a book. Sorry, don't judge a book by its cover is the theme for Beauty and the Beast, right? It's all about Belle trying to see past the exterior of the beast to see that there's a human heart there. Um, that's something that we can all connect with as humans around the world. So those are universal truths that we try and put into the thematics of a Disney film. That's
Yeah.
why they play well around the world.
Yeah, but there's also a sense where you're able to work on specific scenes, like you said. For instance, a lot of times talk through, like Mulan, there was a scene where they had to talk with the good angel and the bad angel. That was something that you had to come up with.
Yeah, exactly. And that was certainly for fun. And I mean, the whole film is just, all about, having fun and making it. It was a comedy first and foremost, for sure. But yeah, that element of that Kronk has a conscience and that we actually show visually as being a good angel and a bad angel, and they speak into his life. And really the comedy of it is that they have little to no effect in helping him. They actually make him much more confused about his choices. But that was just a super fun thing to be able to do, to bring those characters to life, that we would see this alter ego of like, what if Kronk was 100% evil? That would be personified by the devil character. What if he was angelic and always being good? Then that's how we personified that other character, the angel. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was mostly for fun, of course, but I like to be able to kind of introduce that spiritual side, even in a joking way.
Yeah. Tony, I've gotten a couple of questions from different people. How do you then, as an animator, work in this situation? Because for some of us, we may be in that situation in a different industry. Work with an industry that doesn't really follow some of the Christian values that we have. You work in innovation where you're going to deal with values that you may not always disagree with. How do you deal with that?
Um, I really try and again, I think it's like anything is trying to understand the heart of people. And that means so much. It's trying to find the truth in why people are hostile or why people feel a certain way, why people feel differently than I do, or vice versa. So if you can feel their heart and try and understand and connect with their heart, they're going to be more apt to try and do the same for you. And I've always felt that if somebody feels that you are truthful, that you are honest, that you genuinely care about them and treat them with respect, they're gonna want to listen to you. They're gonna want to befriend you, and that's where it starts. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but to be that kind of an influencer for Christ is the right kind of start to any kind of way of having an effect on people. So that's where I start anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tony, how do you work in a situation where you say, okay, Tony, in this particular film or this particular animation, these are the values we want you to promote or to talk through or animate, and you disagree with that. How do you navigate through that?
Well, it's funny because, and I tell my students this, up until very recently, I never had a conflict with being asked to work on something that I felt was, against my Christian values. It might not have been outwardly Christian material, that's for sure. Any of the Disney films are not, they're not, they're not putting them up on a pedestal and saying they're Christian, but family friendly, good moral values, that kind of thing was always part of the storytelling and had a place in the work in early days for me at Disney. But things have changed in the animation industry. And I've been kind of sheltered from that because I went into directing, I was working on my own projects, and then I started teaching. And so I was a part of films like, Looney Tunes, Space Jam: A New Legacy. I animated on that, or I worked on um, what's the remake of Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins Returns had some
Yeah.
animation in it. But again, they were based on projects and things that were not overtly evil or had adult themes to them, and so I felt pretty safe being in the animation industry. I never had really a conflict of like, oh gosh, should I even say yes to this? Or until recently, when I moved out here, actually, Warner Brothers called me and they had a new movie. And at first, they didn't tell me what it was about because they knew I was a Christian, but they really wanted me to work on it. It was a 2D animated film with animals and all this kind of stuff. And so from the first pitch, I'm like, oh, talking animals, it's a funny comedy. Oh, yeah, I'm in. And I told them I was very interested to do freelance on it. Well, they called me about 6 months later when they were ready to start going up, and they're like, or start rolling into production, and they were like, "Well, we want you to do a character. We want you to be a lead on this, to be, a team leader and a supervising animator, and let me tell you about it a little bit more. So it's about these dogs, and they're about to get fixed and spayed or whatever it is that male dogs get, and then they have one like crazy night out, and it was basically like." The Hangover with dogs, basically, and it was rated R. It was going to be the rated R movie that they were going to come out with, and it was all cursing and sex stuff, and with these dogs. I was like, no, I can't. That's what it's about. I can't work on this. I said, I'm a Christian, and they're like, well, what if we do this? And they're trying to compromise to get me to work on it by saying, well, what if we just gave you the scenes where there's no curse words, and we can kind of handpick some scenes that you do that are that won't be. I said, but my name will be on it. My influence will be on this. I said, I tell my students all the time that I will not work on something that faith wise that I feel like is against what God wants me to do. And so I said, I can't have my name on this, even if you handpicked all the funny, non, spicy scenes. I still can't be a part of it. And they said, well, we understand it. And they said, well, to tell you the truth, we knew you're a Christian, so we knew that this was going to be a hard sell. So we understand and no hard feelings. And so that was the first time I ever had that conflict in my career. It was the first time I had to turn down something because of my own moral compass saying I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very good. Tony, what else do you tell your students as well too about some of the hard parts of being an animator? Also, a lot of times, and this also ties in with one question someone was asking, how do you deal with the ups and downs? Because a lot of times when you're just starting out, it's hard to find a job or you may not get a role or all of that. How do you deal? What are some of the things you talk to your students about?
Yeah, I have students and I have friends that are Christians that work professionally in the animation industry, and they've had to come against those same opportunities and really tasked with that. What do I do as a Christian? Like I said, I haven't had to deal with that too much, and I think a lot of it is because I'm proud of my faith, and I tell people that I'm a Christian. I don't wait too long before people realize who I am and what I stand for. And I think that's really important too. But some of my friends have admitted that they went through hard times, and they took a job on like an Adult Swim kind of cartoon that had sexy stuff in it, or had curse words and things like that. And that's out there these days. That wasn't when I was younger. You didn't see that kind of content, except for maybe Ralph Bakshi or something doing some weird thing that he was doing. Um, but and that's a deep cut for those who know who Ralph Bakshi is. But I didn't come up against that. But I tell my students I don't want to judge others on the choices they make, because I have seen, and I have one friend in particular that I'm thinking of right now, where she has spent 7 years working on a cartoon called Archer. And if you know Archer, if you've seen the trailers and stuff for it, it's on Adult Swim, and it is very much, adult content. And she said she took that job because she felt like in her heart that God was wanting her to be there as a light. So not to be in effect so much on the content. She knew she was going to change the show to be some other show. All of a sudden, it's about rose petals and talking fluffy, rabbits. No, it was going to be what it was going to be. But behind the scenes, she was working in the office and every day having being a light in people's lives. And that's why I say I can't judge her choice to work on that adult content, even though I probably wouldn't have. But I see that she had a great effect. She has a circle of friends. They all know who she is. They all know that she's a believer. They've all asked questions too about her faith and why she follows God. And she has had so many openings to be able to I can never say that, but speak the word of God into their lives, talk about her faith, talk about her journey, and be an influence on them. So there are ways as Christians that we can do that, even in the dark places of the entertainment industry. And that has to be a choice. That has to be a prayerful choice that you really feel. Like I said, she felt God was saying, "No, I want you to do this, to be there," because nobody else was there. Nobody else had the light. And I'd say good for her.
Tony, as I sit here talk with you and everyone who's watching, they said, wow, he's made it. He's done Disney. He was a director of Mulan. He worked on some wonderful, wonderful characters. But talk about a time when nothing seemed to go well. Nothing
Mhm.
seemed to go right. And you're just get discouraged and discouraged and discouraged. How do you work yourself out of this situation?
Well, I'll tell you, I got to stop drawing for this story because, we all have hard times. We all have difficulty in our lives. And the Bible tells us that becoming a Christian doesn't mean that everything's going to become rosy and sweet and easy, and we're going to have a lot of money and no difficulty. It says the opposite, actually. We follow a life of following Christ, and it's going to be hard, and we're going to be judged, and we're going to feel like outcasts and all of that. So there was a time when I felt like I was on top of the world. I'd been at Disney for I rose quickly in the ranks of Disney, and I credit God for that. But there was a time when I started feeling like it was about me. It wasn't about God. I was making this happen. Hey, I'm really great at what I do and all this kind of stuff. And I went from being the youngest supervising animator on The Lion King of Pumbaa to becoming the youngest director in Disney history at 27 when I started animating or directing Mulan. And I started feeling kind of filling my oats, and just feeling like it's all about me. And my head was swelling, I guess you could say. I was a believer, and yet I wasn't turning to God. I wasn't, and I feel like God put me at a point where there was a day where I felt God called me, like really woke me out of my sleep and said, I want you to use your talents and abilities more for me. And I felt strongly that he was saying, leave Disney and set on a new path of using your skills still, but for my glory and for teaching others about who I am. And so I felt like I needed to quit Disney. I told my wife that. She was like, God ain't telling me that. I like my house. And because it meant a huge sacrifice. We were getting a huge salary back then. It was a good time in the animation industry and for Disney after The Lion King. And so I was making the most money I'd ever made. And really more than I deserved to make in a lot of ways. They were just paying people like crazy dollars back then. And so I I said, well, let's pray about it. And she prayed about it, and she came back to me within a month and said, you know what? You're right. I feel God is calling me to support you, and we're going to do this together. We're going to leave Disney and start your own animation company, because that's what I really felt like was happening. Was God was asking me to start my own faith-based animation company, and VeggieTales was out and doing really well in the world. And I thought, if they can do that with CG, computer animation, why not with 2D and what I love to do? And I love to, excuse me, create characters and create stories. So, maybe that'll be my thing. So with two guys from my church, I left Disney after about 12 years of being there. Had to ask to get out of my contract early. I still had 2 years left on a contract with them, and they let me out of my contract. And everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody at Disney, all my friends thought I was nuts. And yet there was also this kind of cool, oh, Tony's leaving and starting his own studio and stuff. And some of it was a kind of cool. And that's the part that I listened to mostly. And again, it didn't help with me kind of feeling like my head was taken off a little bit too much. So I don't know. I set out and I did this thing, and we called it Tenacious Family Entertainment. We started our own series called Lenny and Sid, which was this 2D animated rabbit and mouse. And it was crazy, crazy fun, and I loved it at first. We had one investor that believed in us, that was a Christian, that put a bunch of money into what we were doing. Everything seemed to go well. 9/11 happened, the economy changed, the housing market crashed soon after that, and all of a sudden that investor went away. And when all those things happen, which seemed like overnight, it really took about a year for it to really come to fruition. All of a sudden now I'm paying employees and not paying myself. We don't have money to do the third episode of Lenny and Sid. We have to lay off people. We don't have enough money to pay our mortgage on the house that I bought. I had downsized, actually. I'd sold my car. Um, I was selling artwork. I had a huge collection of beautiful Disney artwork and paintings and things like that. I was selling all my artwork and all my stuff just to keep the doors open and pay people. And then it got worse. And it got worse by my house that we had just purchased and we had downsized into and living there. My wife we had 3 kids at this point, and we got mold in the house. Mold, like this, back then it was like this black mold, and it's really unhealthy. We couldn't live in the house. And so they tore up our kitchen. So therefore we had to move out into an apartment that we rented for first a hotel for a year and a half with 3 young kids, all under the age of 7. Two of them were in diapers. with 2 bedroom small apartment. We lived there for a year and a half while we were trying to basically had to sue our insurance company. They weren't paying for anything, so I was paying my mortgage and the rental. We were bleeding money at this point, and it's at a point where we're trying to get our investor to come back and give us money so we can keep going and make a paycheck, and we're trying to do work for hire. Within 5 years of starting the company, we were in the lowest possible point. Now I went from 5 years earlier being at Disney, making the most money in my life, to now not knowing how to provide for my family, literally depending on the help of others. And that's a hard place to be. When I used to be 5 years before that, I was the one that was, you'd hear about a need in the church. Oh, there's this family and they can't make their bills and pay, and they're getting food on their shelf. And we'll do an anonymous check. I was that one. I was like, well, honey, we're going to let's send them $500, and let's help them out. And it'll be anonymous. And now people were doing that for us at our church. We would be wondering about how we were going to provide the next week for food and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, a gift card for a grocery store would show up. There would be a generous donation or a love offering that was done for me and my family. And it was really tough on the ego, my ego at the time, going from like, I was a Disney director and now I need handouts. And what do I do with all that? And God, where is God in all of this? I left and sacrificed everything to start this faith-based company, and it's failing. And I don't know what's going to happen. And there was a moment where I kind of did this shouting out to God of, Lord, where are you in all this? And are you still here? Are you still with me? And it was that day that and I was at this low point. My wife calls me. She's in the apartment. And if you know my wife, you don't, but I'm going to tell you, her worst fear is ants. Okay. So I'm sure in Africa and places where you guys are at right now, you got ants, a lot of ants. This apartment, I think, was built on an anthill or something, because we had ants all the time. And so she calls me at work. I'm at Tenacious, my company, and she's like, "You got to come home right now. I just got home with the kids. There's ants all over the refrigerator. They're in the cereal. They're all over the counter." And she was in a panic. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." I literally had $5 in my pocket, which was supposed to pay for my lunches throughout the week, because like Costco is right up the street across from us, and you can get a drink and a hot dog for $1.50. So I knew that was going to be my lunch for all week. And so I tell, "Okay, honey, I'll go." And she's like, "You got to come home and deal with this. Buy a can of Raid. I want you to extinguish these these beasts." And I'm like, "Oh, a can of Raid? Why would I could just like clean them off with water or something? I don't know." And she's like, "No, I want them gone. They cannot return. Get the Raid." And I'm thinking like, "Oh, that's like $5 probably right there. That's my whole allowance for the week." So I get in the car. I know I got to do something. So I go to Safeway and I stop there, and I'm just upset. I'm angry. I'm angry at ants. I'm angry at God. I'm angry at everything. Like, can anything go right here? And so I go into the Safeway and I go down to aisle 4 and grab the Raid, and I, stomp up to the cash register and I put it down and I give her my $5, and I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "Oh," all of a sudden, this light, I didn't notice who she was, but she was this bright light all of a sudden that got really excited and said, "You know what? If you go back to aisle 4 and grab the one right next to it, and if you're a Safeway, a Safeway, whatever rewards member, which I was, you can get this discount." And this, long story short, that 4.95, whatever, a can of Raid cost me a quarter. I left there having only spent a quarter. And I called Renee and I said, I can't believe this. I've never paid so low amount of money for anything, let alone a can of Raid. God, God showed up in that very silly, stupid moment where I was asking for, where my wife wanted something that probably we didn't need. I needed to do that to help her out. He showed up in that low moment and said, "I'm here. I got you." if I can take care of this, I can take care of the big things too. And you're not gonna die. It's gonna be a struggle. It's gonna be difficult, but I'll be here with you. And that was the biggest lesson that I could have learned. After that, my wife and I were crying on the phone, both of us, as I drive home with this can of Raid to the apartment. And it was still another year before we were able to get back into our house. And yes, we did end up um, financially having to close the studio in another couple years after that. But I was changed. My wife was changed. My kids, my partners in the business, we all became closer to God and realized what it truly meant to rely on God in every little thing, even the cans of Raid. And that was the low point, Tommy. That was for me the defining moment
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of knowing and really feeling God's presence in my life. And it wasn't about me anymore. Now it's always about following God and trusting in Him.
Yeah, Tony, in some sense, you're also reminded because even when I start Resource Global, I mean, I had no money. I'm in debt. I go through these periods where I don't know how I'm going to meet payroll. I don't know how to navigate through all these different things. But I am
Yeah,
reminded about the very fact that God says, Tommy, I didn't promise you the direction. I didn't promise you good results the way you wanted to do. You have to
yeah,
give up the idea that if you're faithful to me, all your expectations will be met. That's not my promise.
yes,
Yeah. And you probably were sitting there, Lord, I walked away from this high paying job at Disney. I sacrificed to do your will. So
yeah.
where are you? Because you're expecting him to work exactly the way you want him to work.
Exactly. And I thought it was, my idea for Lenny and Sid and this series was the thing that was going to save the world. And Um, no, what he wanted was for me and my wife and my family and my friends to go on this journey together of faith, to really truly put ourselves out there for God. We can't help ourselves. We can't make our mortgage and pay for our meals and stuff. What are we going to do? And so we were at that point where we truly had to give up everything. And when we gave up everything is when we gained everything. And that was the true lesson that I learned in Tunacious and starting my company. It wasn't about how to make better animation or change the world through cartoons and all that kind of stuff that I thought it was going to be about. It was really about changing my heart first. Since then, I will say, I'm happy to say, something miraculous has happened. God continues to reveal himself, but it's funny how, I thought that was my last and only effort and choice to, or opportunity to do some kind of faith-based material with animation. But God has always kept this promise alive in me that one day I'll be able to do something more for his glory using the talents and abilities that I have in animation. And that has paid off here because now I'm working with my twin brother in Tennessee here on a 2D animated feature called Light of the World. We just dropped a trailer for it a couple days ago. It's going to be a feature film that's out in theaters, and it is the story of Jesus through the eyes of his favorite apostle, John. And in our film, we play all the disciples very young. They're all in their either teens or early 20s, and young John is a teenager, and he's trying to discover who the Messiah is. And so he goes on a journey of coming to find Jesus and befriending him and realizing that he is who he says he is, the Son of God on earth. And all the way through the resurrection, the death and resurrection on the cross, he goes on this journey with Jesus. And so it's really like taking what I learned from Disney and being in the entertainment world, working for other studios, and putting it to Jesus, putting it to the story of the Bible. And through that lens of kind of what would Disney do to make this more universal and make it more impactful, we've really created kind of a storybook version of the Jesus story. It's something I'm really proud of. I didn't think I'd ever be able to get this opportunity. I've waited, I hate to say it, 57. I guess that's what I am now. 57 years to be able to do this, but it comes at just the best time where I feel like I'm finally ready to do a story like this. So can I share with you the trailer
Oh,
if you
please
haven't
do,
seen it?
Tony. Yeah, please
Would you
do.
guys like to see it? Okay. And then maybe we could do Q&A or something, whatever you want to do after that, all right? Um, let's see. I'll go full screen with it here. It's only about a minute. Hopefully you guys can hear it okay too. Here it is.
No one is coming to save us. We have to focus on working hard and not crossing roads.
My papa says the Messiah isn't real. He's just a story.
So what do you believe?
Dad, he turned! He turned water into wine!
No one could perform the miracles he does if God were not with him. He is nothing.
No, guys! They're coming for Jesus!
Here's a smart play every time for Hertz Gold Plus Rewards members. See the Hertz counter.
Tony, how did this come about? Was this a project that you pitched over to a group of people, or did a group of people approach you and Tom?
It was a group of people that approached Tom first, and then he pulled me into it. So Tom is my twin brother is co-directing this with a guy named John Schaefer, who's a longtime friend of Tom and I. But mostly Tom's. They worked together for like 10 years when Tom was working for TBN on Superbook, which was an animated project for a while. Um, and so he and John got together. This is, I want to say, about a year and a half ago now, and then asked me to, right when Tom started working for me, I think he was there for a month, and then said, we got to pull in Tony on this. And I became the head of story, doing in charge of all the storyboards and that team. And then ultimately, as we moved into animation, now I'm the animation director on the project. We have a studio in Ireland, which we visited several times, who are really great. They're called Lighthouse, but not a Christian studio. It seems like a perfect title, though, right, for our animation group in Ireland, Lighthouse Studios. They're just really talented at what they do. They do great 2D animation. This is a technique that's not totally full animation like the Disney days that I know. So there are, it is a less expensive film by far than what we would do at Disney. It's an independent, so a lower budget. We have less time and less money. So, but we're using those resources as wisely as we know how. And if it wasn't for all the time that I had having my own studio, understanding budgets and procedure and pipeline and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we could have really made this. People will look at this and they'll have no idea how much we really spent on it. It's going to be lower than probably most people think, but we've learned how over the years how to squeeze out every single dime out of a production and to get the most for our dollar and put it on the screen. That's been that's why I think doing this movie now has been hugely beneficial to the outcome and success of the film because of our knowledge that Tom and I have over the years.
Yeah, yeah. We don't have too much time left, Tony, but I mean, share, what is your vision for, as even now as you're working with students, all of that stuff, what is your vision for where you're hoping film-wise you're going to take it, but also as you continue to work with students?
Uh, yeah, I do have, I feel like God gave me a calling to, and I kind of hit upon this in the beginning, but, um, you know, I don't think that I feel strongly that God calls us to excellence in everything that we do. And certainly in movies and the craft of what Hollywood does and does so well over so many, whatever, almost 100 years now of creating movies, there's an expectation of and an understanding from the audience of what quality looks like, especially in animation. We can tell when something looks cheap or awful or is not done well. And I feel strongly that the way we're going to reach people for Christ is we have to be excellent first at the crafts and skills that we have, that we love, that we're passionate about, and not just try and do it cheaply or quickly because it's Christian. And I have I have a lot of opinions about that that I learned because I was in that industry with Lenny and Sid and that project I was telling you about at my own studio. I was in the faith-based industry for so long, and I was not happy with what I saw. There was a general sense of people don't need more. They're not asking for more. They just want biblical truths up on the screen. That's all we really need to do. So why are we spending money? Why are we paying people a professional salary even? And so my whole goal is to raise up the next generation of creators in the animation industry specifically, that know how to be excellent at what they do, and they happen to be Christians also, and want to make Christian content. But first, it comes with a deeper understanding of what the hard work is that you have to put into something to make it excellent.
Yeah, yeah. For those who are sitting here and you are in different countries and you're in your mid 20s to mid 30s, that's what Resource Global is hoping to do. We're in 13 different cities with Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur. We're in Cluj, we're in Nairobi, Cape Town, Pretoria, Johannesburg, Hong Kong, LA. I see Charity McLeod for those who are in LA, in Austin, Texas, or even parts of the world. We have an 8-month cohort program in which we come alongside with you. And we have people like a Tony. We have people who are pastors and ministry leaders, men and women from around the world, talking through how does a Christ follower work and change in the area of animation, as an engineer, as a nurse, as a teacher, all of that, because God has uniquely designed you to really make a difference in your city. And so our 8-month cohort program, I will send you more information on that. Tony, as we wrap up, what is your final word for some of these younger leaders that are sitting here from all over the world? What would you say to them? What are some of your thoughts that you encourage them by?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we are, the world went through a lot when you guys were younger, very recently younger, in the way of COVID and all that. I feel like your generation has been hit hard by feelings and sentiments of doubt, fear, and anxiety, like no generation has before. And I want to call you guys to rise up above that. We have a God, and just like the example in my raid story, we have a God that cares about even the littlest of our needs, our little anxieties, our little things, our little foibles, mental health issues, whatever it may be. God is bigger than all those things. And I want you guys to just try and get past the things of the past and move forward into the success and the rewards that God has for you if you faithfully follow him. I really believe that. And I tell my kids that. I tell my students there at Lipscomb University, where I work, that there is hope in the future. And I really believe that. Matter of fact, I think I have is that you, Andrew Ford? One of my students is here. I know Edward and I know Destin, and so this is a philosophy and a hope that I have, and a prayer really for all of my students, is that they feel that and know that they are equipped. And you will never feel equipped. You'll never feel right for the job. We all have those feelings of doubts and anxieties that we're not good enough. But God has chosen you, so you are good enough. You are good enough to do that. And so live in that promise.
Got it. Thank you very much. Tony, thank you. We are so looking forward to your film. When does the film come out?
Yeah, so it says summer 2025 at the end of the trailer, but it's really like end of summer. So September 5th is when it's scheduled to drop now.
All right. Hey, when that time comes on, we're gonna have to bring you and Tom back and really celebrate the movie as you guys finish it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. We'll be eager to talk about it. So let's do that.
All right. We'll talk soon, guys. Have a good night. For those who are it's evening, good night. For those, have a wonderful day. Tony, have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bless you all.